Welcome back to Data Innovation Summit 2018 for our third session of the day. We have three very interesting guests with us, Peter, Oliver, and Ted from Tableau, Trifacta, and Attunity. And today we're going to be talking about Big Data Trends 2018 and beyond. We're not very far into 2018, so I want to hear about the latest and greatest trends that you think right now are cutting edge, that not all your customers might be using, that might be giving a business advantage to any customer that's taking a look at it and really latching onto it. So we have seated you guys a little bit in a data pipeline order here. So please introduce a little bit yourself.
Sure, many thanks. So my name is Ted Orme. I'm VP of Marketing Business Development at Attunity. We're a data integration company. Our mission is about making data available. And really the three big trends that we see, the evolutionary journey that we see with our clients and our customers today are really based on from a sort of data warehousing to data lake. That's the evolution of Hadoop. Then from a sort of batch to streaming and the evolution now of Kafka, Confluent, MapR streams, event hubs, Kinesis, all of that streaming technology. And then from an on-premise to cloud. And the interesting thing about cloud is about not just an infrastructure as a service, or sort of I'm not going to build another data center, but really what you can do in the cloud, that bursting, that separation of compute and storage, doing things in technology that you could never do just on a big piece of tin. So those are really themes, that the evolutionary process of the sort of the next wave of Hadoop, streaming technologies and cloud. That's what we're seeing, and we're bringing data, helping people in that the technology of bringing their most valuable data into those types of platforms.
All right. Oliver?
Yeah, I'm Olivier. I'm solutions lead in EMEA for Trifacta. So we're the next piece in the data pipeline after the integration. So Trifacta focuses on data wrangling, which is essentially self-service data preparations. So once the data has been integrated, whether it's on a Hadoop cluster or on your desktop or in the cloud, we actually process the data and transform it in a way that's consumable for business users. So yeah, definitely self-service as a key theme we've seen in the industry, and we're all about self-service data preparation.
So the latest and greatest is that people can take things into their own hands and make use of it rather than having to go to some kind of subject matter expert.
Exactly. Well, it's a matter of putting it in the hands of those who know how to work with it. So making the data accessible, making the raw data directly accessible for business users, instead of having that typical IT bottleneck.
Right.
So yeah, self-service is really key.
All right. Peter?
And we represent the business there, right? I'm Peter Jönsson from Tableau locally, sales consultant, solutions engineer here in the region. And so yeah, what do? I mean, a tagline, we help people see and understand their data, regardless if it's big data or small data or transparent data or funky data. So yeah, that's what we do. And same thing, self-service. We want the people that can use the insight and make actions and make the decisions. They are the ones that should be in front of the data insight and analytics tools.
Well, big data has certainly been top of mind, in part because results can be very flashy nowadays, and in part because you can build entirely new services on it that weren't possible before. So I'd like to start off by asking you, where do you feel that big data pays off the most? And to counterbalance that, where has it not met expectations?
And let's focus on the use case. Data lakes has just been the nirvana for the same train, not on managing a cluster that is in the cloud. You really get the benefits. Tools. Breadth of use cases across clients, and the scientists put it into the hands of the business users so that they can start using it, rather than it being lost in an IT cell of just managing a huge, great cluster that it is still struggling to show the real value.
What do you think?
I think Ted is definitely right here in terms of addressing the right type of user. I can't really define. They actually do their day-to-day work in Excel. That's
pivot charts.
Exactly. A lot of the population However, data engineers and data scientists is also a community and a portion of that workforce that's also growing. So you have to cater to the different groups of users, making it accessible to the masses in the first hand, but also expanding the possibilities in terms of the language usage and how the wrangling is actually done through different data pipelines for these different groups.
Right. Okay. How about you, Peter? Trends?
I agree.
Trends and
Make the data available, doesn't matter what it is and where, how big and what format, shape, and whatever. I mean, make some use out of it. And I think that has been the problem. Spending too much time on like harnessing it and creating these huge data lakes or whatever, and not having enough business benefit of it. Let me start on the flip side. Who wants to get that insight? By whom, when, how, in what format? Then we start walking backwards and see what kind of data do we need, in what format, how do we want to aggregate it at a granular level or something. So I think that's the thing.
do a lot of people have to decide all of those things ahead of time? I see some people have to make this big project. We need to get this data in order to derive any insight at all.
I have a great example there. It's like one of the biggest banks here in Sweden. I mean, we have a couple of them, 4. One of those embarked on a huge Hadoop distribution project a couple of years ago, and their CIO said quite early in the project, in the beginning, said, "We're a bank. You think we have a lot of data? We don't actually have a lot of data. We're not a retail company. We don't sell clothes. We're not a telco organization. We don't track people's health. We're a bank. We create ourselves a data problem every night by moving data from this container to that container, wash it here, cleanse it there, transform it there, and all of a sudden we created a data problem. So all of a sudden then when we come in the morning, we have data people who want to access that data. They don't even know where to start because we have created ourselves a mess. Can we fix that with the Hadoop distribution? Can we fix that with the data lake? Maybe, but let's start thinking on the backside. We can't take all those containers and empty them down in this data lake. That won't fix the problem. Then we just add in another one of those problem areas, I would say. So I don't know if they need to have all these questions available, but start with like, what are we in the business for? A bank is not in the business to harvest and store data. I mean, Facebook seemed to be in that business, but the banks and the insurance companies, they don't want to do that. They want to serve their customers with the best financial advice and services that they can. So if somebody else can harness the data and make sure it's available for their business question, I think that's the beauty of it.
Right.
So make use of the tools and the technologies that are there, but not necessarily do bank people need to put all that data in data lakes. That's my take.
All right. Let's dive into some follow-up questions based on the things you guys have said. You mentioned the cloud a couple of times. And I guess this becomes an edge case. It's not necessarily applicable to everybody. But the question is, do cloud services really scale? And that's sort of a trick question, I suppose, because the answer, as we all know, is yes, under the circumstances for which it's built. So what kind of things should a company be aware of if they're thinking about scaling to the cloud? You know, throughput to the cloud, software as a service type things, and that kind of thing.
I think the thing we're hearing over and over is that people don't want to fall into the same mistakes they've made before. So you had traditional, OLTP systems, and then warehouses, and then you had data lakes, and they all independently became silos. They all, another endpoint, another silo. And now there's this, okay, they have a cloud-first strategy. You have
to follow up on what you mentioned before about access to the data, having to ask for it, but not knowing what to ask for because they don't know, where the answer might lie and that kind of thing. What about insider problems? So that you don't want people to have access to too much data because that has a financial aspect. Is that something that you have encountered?
I guess we come back to the discussions around the governance models behind this, underlying the whole framework and who gets access to what, how is that dealt with, what's the frequency of access. Coming back to what Peter was saying in terms of we're creating just new problems if we move the different silos from one load to another load. Is that really effective? And if we just give access to the data to everyone, is there some underlying aspects? Of course there will be. The whole point is to make that in a governed manner. So that term governance has been recurring. So Trifacta partners a lot with different companies for cataloging, which is often referred to for that governance aspect. Once you have your data, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, as we just mentioned, like Ted was saying, we're moving to a multiple cloud, on-prem environment. Hybrid model is all what everyone is talking about right now. We have lots of customers that move from on-prem to the cloud and do their development in the cloud and move back to on-prem and then to Teradata warehouses. So giving access to all this in a governed fashion is really crucial. And to be able to search and access the data is also important. And that happens through cataloging, appropriate cataloging of the data. And that's where we partner with different companies like Elation and Waterline, for example.
All right. I'm going to be tough on you this time. So in my company, we deal with very many things that we want to visualize at the same time, millions of things. And we have to do it on GPUs because it's unreasonable to draw that many things on the screen at the same time. So it ends up being somewhat of a custom solution. And it would be nice if there were tools that did all these things out of the box. And there are some that do some parts of it and some that do other parts, but nothing that does everything that we need in particular. So now that people are getting very creative with...
What's a GPU solution?
A GPU solution is one that if you want to draw lots of points, say on a map or something, the GPU will be able to draw all the points on the map in just a second. Rather, if you want to draw, for example, there was a very nice picture, the one that Facebook made a couple of years ago, where they have friends. And it was hundreds of millions of lines between the people on the globe. That kind of a picture on a CPU can take, well, if you do it in Julia, it'll go rather fast, but if you do it in any other programming language, it'll probably take minutes to hours, and it's not reasonable to work in that kind of an environment. So I'm wondering, people are getting creative with how they want to consume their data. Are you seeing that kind of a demand that people are asking for more ways to consume their data? I mean, the data is quite complicated. Is it still just pie charts, or are people moving forward?
Pie charts, but
So tell us a little bit about how you guys can expose this complex data, big data that has either very many samples or very complex relationships.
I mean, yeah, good question, big question. But going back to what I said in the beginning, what do? We help people see and understand their data, and the emphasis and the focus in that sentence is on people. I don't think that many people that do that kind of work, but I mean there are some, of course, and there's specific solutions obviously for it that tailor to that specific need. But we work more with the regular data people, the regular business analysts, HR analysts, marketing analysts, and people who may not have always that huge requirements in terms of data points or scatters and things like that. So what? That's the trend we see. We want to democratize how people work with the data, and that may be simple solutions as well as some of the more advanced. But
well, that's important.
We don't necessarily see that our customers turning to us and say, we want more advanced statistical features to make this work for us.
No, but you can, looking at data in a visual way is just so much more, not tactile, but you can see things different than if you see on a chart. For instance, if you're looking at sales and you're looking at a histogram and there's a sale in the future, it sticks out. Yep. There's not supposed to be sales in the future, whereas in a table you might not see it. So
unless you have a forecast.
Unless you have a forecast, true. But past sales, and then you have a sale in 2020, somebody's hiding something. So visualizations have very many neat options. Are people saying that visualization is a better way to consume big data results, or will there still be how do people handle that dynamic?
In general is a better way of consuming data, period.
Right.
Big data or small data? I mean, what's the difference? I mean, thinking of, is there a line where we say what's big data, what's small data, what's relational database data? I don't think there is a line, really. I mean, it's just different various funny ways of data that may be stored and contained in different formats. But if you want to make some insight and action on that data, I think it's really good to be able to visualize it one way or the other. It may not necessarily need to be in bubble charts. It can actually be in the table, but visualizing it helps. Definitely.
And this is something that not just the data scientists should be able to have access to, but regular business
Out of our
users?
users, I think data scientists are a minority of our users.
Well, what's the typical profile?
Analysts.
Analysts.
I mean, marketing analysts, HR analysts, sales guys, sales reps, salespeople, marketing.
All right. Let's bounce back here. I hope you guys are ready for a little bit of context switching. But we're on the topic of big data, going into the cloud, handling large volumes of data. And I remember when MapReduce came out, I was working with operating systems internals then, and it was touted as a great invention. And the database people were skeptical. And it wasn't obvious to me exactly what the innovation was. You have something that's data parallel, and then you split it, but you don't have to split it because it's already data parallel. So what is it you're actually... But it's a neat programming paradigm, for sure. And so we have this situation where you have event hubs or Kinesis and other types of event ingestion engines out on the cloud. And because it's data parallel coming out from the internet, that's a very good system. I want to find scenarios where people need to be aware of the caveats of working with the cloud, such as if you're collecting all of your IoT data in a single factory and needs to stream one pipe out to the cloud and maybe needs something like Microsoft Express Route or Direct Connect or something like that, if that changes things. Or in my experience, if you want to use a data lake as a service or disk as a service compared to the performance you would expect out of Isilon or some real on-prem device,
Sure.
how do you need to be aware of those caveats?
So couple of things there that we touched upon that we haven't touched upon yet. First thing is Internet of Things and IoT and the scale that is coming at, but I'll come onto that bit in a second. And the first bit is really just people have a conception that if they are looking to be moving data to the cloud, that there is somewhere this bottleneck that is network or throughput or process. But in our experience, because that they are thinking in a batch ETL process. They're thinking of the old sort of Informatica Talent type of process of going to a source system, scooping it all up, moving it around, and that took a long time, was heavy, was CPU intensive, and as such, they then tried to take that model to a cloud infrastructure and found the bottleneck of networking within that. But actually, the modern flow is a stream, is a technology, and a stream is like a tap that you just turn on, and actually, even our largest clients, the throughput coming out of the huge, great telcos, the banking systems, if you're picking up data in real time off transactional systems, the amount of data is actually pretty small. They may have 5 or 6 terabytes of data, but actually the redo logs, the transactional logs are typically only a few hundred megabytes.
Well, I'll challenge you there. A typical
for
MME.
transactional systems, for starting on the track, I'm going to come to IoT in a second. Right. So for that transactional systems, that is where you are picking up the out of those traditional on-premise sort of transactional systems itself. So actually, the rate of change with the deltas is typically well handled by networks that they have. Now, the interesting thing is what you can do with the data is much more when you blend it with IoT, with extra, with sensor data, with bigger amounts of data itself. And there, it is a split, because quite a lot of that itself is almost data that's born in the cloud. You're actually running services, you're running applications, whether or not it's sensor data from other systems or external data to the application itself. And there, traditionally, you may have one system in one environment, on one system in another, but you don't have the same sort of application bottlenecks that's coming through just one flow. You'll have, working with Ford, they have about 4,500 applications streaming off all their production systems globally.
Right.
So all of those are streaming up into cloud infrastructure. So each individual environment manages that sort of network. So it's not everything has to come through a single process. This is another benefit of cloud. Cloud is ubiquitous, is sort of above us, and we will, rain data up into the cloud, as opposed to defining an ETL flow of the old process that everything has to go through one gateway server. Everything comes in here, you're crunching it up and then moving it into a third normal form data warehouse and the like. So this is where I think the services that cloud operators give you, that service layer of bringing data into the cloud, and then once it's in the cloud, or the application is a cloud native application itself, it's already there. This is where you're getting the benefit of both on-premise transactional and cloud bursting environments. Now, the next scaling question is understanding what sort of applications are there. There's sort of the Redshift, SQL Data Warehouse, Snowflake now, and these are the sort of the analytical engines that are comparable to the on-premise applications. And so far we're seeing great technology here, in that you truly can have that t-shirt size sort of expansion. That a process that's running on an M large 4 CPU may take you an hour. You can click, quad, and up it goes, and all of a sudden it's done in 10 minutes, and then you shut it down.
Right.
That elasticity is, we are seeing that now in the market. We are seeing many vendors in that space doing that, and we're helping them on bringing their most valuable data into those environments.
All right. So one thing that you all have in common is having to integrate with each other's tools. Not necessarily each other's tools, but also each other's tools. How does it work in practice when you're at a customer? The customer's talking about big data. Maybe they already have a Hadoop system in place, or maybe they have some kind of database, some warehouses, a bunch of systems. And because you don't all offer end-to-end solutions, how do you approach recommending a customer a plan of action with regards to the people? You probably have partner lists, but how do you approach that in general?
Glad you asked the question. I actually have a very concrete example. At the moment, I'm working with a prospect in the UK where I'm directly engaged with Tableau. So I'm working alongside with a Tableau consultant from Germany, and he's been designing the whole dashboarding and representations of different reports. And the wrangling piece is done in Trifacta alongside with Tableau. So in terms of integration, we do have direct integration with Tableau in TD format, or direct Tableau server integration. And we do that with a lot of the different partners. I think also when you go and work with customers and prospects, it's all about finding the right people and target users that you're going to have, and trying to bring the different segments together. So as you said, we don't have end-to-end platforms, but it's about bringing the different user groups together through our different visions and lens. So I think it's very important to see what the users are doing in their different segments and learn from that. Going back to the key trends in big data, I think collaboration is really important to highlight. And this is often how we go about this in the different projects that we work on with the different vendors. Collaboration between the different tools, but also collaboration between the different users that use the tools. So how can we give someone, for example, the opportunity that has only been working in Excel spreadsheets for its entire life? I'm thinking of actuaries in insurance companies, for example, and that they're really pigeonholed into one segment and they haven't really done anything else. How can we give access to that same actuary, the knowledge of the other actuaries within his teams, or interact with a broker or an underwriter with a completely different profile, more business focused? They don't speak the same language. So we have to provide some kind of lens through which they can actually communicate and work on the same project. And this is done through all the integration of the different tools.
Right. So collaboration, an interesting question is, do people end up pulling their hair out more often trying to get the tools to integrate, or would you say that tools have now reached? Yeah. Well, have they now reached a point where they integrate better with each other? What would you say is the something that people should be watching out for if they're trying to build this ecosystem of tools now?
I just want to piggyback a little bit on that what you said too. It's like that question also is easier for us to answer also coming into a customer scenario where they say, we're going to solve this problem, we want to do this, can you visualize this? We usually say, let's back up the tape a little bit and say, let's see what business problem do you want to solve, for whom? And then let's see, do you have the data to support that question? Do we have that in place? We're going to stream this data from here. Do you have that in place? Or are you looking for solutions for that? Yeah, maybe. We want to wrangle and transform that data and put it, so have you that in place already? decision never falls on our hand, but we want to ask the questions, have you done it? And if you have done it and you have the data in place to support the business question, it's much easier for us to come in as a data visualization solution and say, let's start visualizing the data because you have done everything in the back end.
Right.
So that solves that question quite a bit, like regardless of what kind of solutions our customers decide on in the back. So
are customers converging towards more standardized architectures that you guys expect, or is it always from the ground up when you're gonna implement something?
both. Other than going, we want a stack of some of the big vendors that can do some of everything. I think they're best at that, and a lot of them are doing best of breed, trying to find solutions that will fit and work for that specific business solution or scenario that they're.
Is it because the industry is fragmented, or is it because the problems are new and there is no best practice?
I might take that. I think in terms of, I come from the Splunk world, which is an end-to-end platform, quite well known, and caters to very specific user groups. So IT and security profiles that would be very familiar with certain types of data. When it comes to the business, it's harder to address the variety of different profiles within the different industries. The business profiles within insurance is not the same than in manufacturing or in a banking environment or in a gaming environment. Completely different user profiles and different subject matter expertise. So that's why you have to actually, when you go to the best of breed kind of approach, going through that collaborative aspect and the different lens of data that you see, I think it makes it easier actually to go forward with the integration. So I would say, there's a bit of both of actual data stacks that's always been in place, historical ones, and then new startups come in and they just want to give a fresh new look at things. There will always be this, for sure. But it's not forever changing, right?
All right. Well, this is a technology conference. So the question is, how does somebody that has been working in data upgrade their resume? What are the new skills that are required for these new types of tools that that somebody that's IT savvy and has worked perhaps programming or databases and wants to latch on to these new technologies? What are the new requirements, would you say?
I can spot a few on your T-shirt.
Sure. These are my favorites. So.
Yeah, well,
mechanical keyboards. Does that qualify? Yeah.
Obviously, other than coming and training up on our product sets, that would be the Attunity sales pitch. I think I'll be coming back to our key themes here, and the idea where we see data having a perishable insight, a real-time processing. So the Spark has pretty much claimed its place as being the best engine within the sort of replacing many ETL processes, things like that on the cluster itself. Spark Streaming will come out of that, and now where Confluent is coming with their KSQL and other processes there. I think if you want to be able to do things with the data that you could not do before, see and understand those tools that are in that space, rather than just doing more of the same. What we were doing 10 years ago, doing it better, that's fine. We're always improving. They're the incremental gains of just making things a little bit better. But doing something that you could not do before in that space, they're the skills that if I had a younger brother training up in that space, I'll be telling him to get on data and understand the use cases that are changing the way that people are running their business itself, rather than just doing better what we were doing before.
Mm-hmm. For me, I think there will always be different new architectures. So there'll be a new Hadoop, a new Spark. We'll move closer and closer to the cloud. There'll be different hybrid architectures for sure. There'll be new programming languages, new visualization aspects, new approaches for sure. One thing that I think we often miss is when we ask a question, define the problem statement, and look at the data that's available and who works on it, we actually look at the data, but also the metadata behind this. So talking about skill sets and resume skill sets, I would say an understanding of how the metadata is abstracted away from the data is also something very important to consider. One of our co-founders, Joe Hellestein, who's working at the RISE lab at Berkeley, he now has another initiative, and the Ground lab, which is very poorly focused on the metadata itself and how it's being accessed, how it's being governed, and how to use that metadata for better collaboration and better, faster access to the data itself and better reuse. So I think an understanding of these fundamental concepts are really key here. Apart from all the moving pieces that are architecture, programming languages, and the various tools that we work on.
Yeah, I'd second the metadata question significantly as well. I think I think that was the sort of the nirvana that is going to solve the data swamp challenge. It's metadata at the end of the day, and having some understanding of that, about where that fits, and again, we're all sitting here between the business and IT in many ways, understanding then the metadata shouldn't be owned by IT. Right. It has an interface that will be driven by the business, and they're the people that and in the old days it would have been a data sort of data catalog, or whether or not it was a CA/Irwin model of the data or something like that. Now it's the building blocks are coming from the data, but how they are reflected by the business in that layer, so that someone will come and say, I have a question of data, and then where is it within my enterprise? And it may be within all these silos, but then from visualization to wrangling, from processes, understanding where metadata is now a critical
I would
part.
take a little bit more academic approach to that. We run something that we call the University to Academic program with Tableau. We give away free software actually to university institutions and staff and students and so forth. I just came from Uppsala University last week, Copenhagen Business School the week before that. And we go out and meet these people, and they ask us that, what do we need to know coming out? We want jobs in the industry today and the business and so forth. And from my mind, I mean, it was 20 years ago that I graduated from college. I went to business school, and the most boring subject that we had, it was like a necessary evil, was statistics. To be quite honest, it was just something you want to cruise through, get done with it, and start doing the interesting stuff like marketing, whatever. But today I say, like, statistics. That's really so important to have a grasp of, to have an understanding, if you don't want to be a statistician or data scientist, but understanding how the statistics work, which is basically as applied mathematics. But that will take you so far in today's industry, regardless if you want to be a technician or IT. Or
what kind of statistics?
I don't care. Know the basics. Start with the basics. 101. Go on to advanced statistics if you want to. If you want to collect statistics and make graphs out of it, or if you want to program with it. But statistics today is, from my perspective, one of the most important fundamentals to be good at a job today, from the business side of where all these logos come from today, I think
right.
It's,
that's very interesting to hear. Say basic math is something that
I said applied mathematics, but okay.
No, well, I mean, statistics doesn't need to be complicated.
No.
But it's not necessarily something that people have taken the time to learn, because it's it's not necessarily exciting the way that it's presented at school all the time. I just had a presentation last week at Stockholm University for statistics students, and they have the other thing where they're not learning programming as much as I think will be required from the future person. Yep. So perhaps it's both things are being balanced. You need to have both a bit of theory and a bit of
absolutely
practical programming knowledge. So how do you guys? We have a couple minutes left. I'd like to round off and ask you, what do you think businesses will be doing different this year than last year in specific with regards to big data?
Some of the things different. I think it's the
what's going to be on the news.
Yeah, no, I think especially I'm an EMEA focused sort of person, but I sort of see a lot from we're a US NASDAQ corporate company, so we see the sort of the lessons learned out of the US, and with anything sometimes between 6 months and a year, sort of following on from that. But I think actually the EMEA market is leading the way in some of that streaming processing and some of that sort of in those engines. And so I think we'll see a continuation of that sort of the Uber effect in the insurance market, or the Uber effect on other sort of more manufacturing. There's industries that have been quite conservative and safe are now they've avoided this big data and Hadoop for the last 10 years, saying we're fine with our traditional models that we have.
Right.
But now this next wave is coming along. They can just jump straight to that and keep their sort of on-premise legacy platforms in play, because they're the business still needs their quarterly reports and analytics and delivering their compliance and GDPR and the like.
Right.
But understanding new things, I think the technology is caught up, and the tools available to make them more, that faster value, faster return on investment, whatever it may be, they can go straight to that, and we'll see those use cases driving those newer sort of challenger industries in the legacy sort of more standardized industries we see today.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. It wouldn't be a proper panel talk if we didn't mention the magic four-letter keyword GDPR, right? I think
I even wrote it here.
we're going to address the whole interactions between the architecture and the regulatory compliance, whether it's GDPR, led in EMEA, and also the interactions with the cloud environments. I think this is going to be a big coming theme. We've been saying cloud for the last 5 or 8 years. It's actually happening right now. It's undergoing, so definitely this will be key for the next few years. Still,
I agree with that. But I would say, looking at the Airbnbs, the Uber, Spotify, Alibaba, they didn't kill the competition by storing more data and creating bigger data lakes. They did it because they started using that data to their advantage. So I think the trend we're going to see now, like, stop wasting so much useless resources on just storing more and more and bigger chunks of data, regardless, here or in the cloud, and start putting that to use. When you start putting it to use and start seeing how you can be better in your competition by utilizing the resources that you have, for example, data, visualizing it in a way that your users and workers can actually make actionable insights and decisions on it, that's when you're going to start seeing the value out of all this, because just putting data and moving from different containers, that won't work. Putting it to use, that's a trend.
All right. So it seems like the unifying theme here is that things are going to be put into practice, and that some of the control is going back to the users when it comes to big data.
absolutely.
Thank you very much for this panel discussion.